Can you imagine it? A war hero, standing alone in the biting November chill, turned away from a gala meant to honor his legacy. "Sir, this is a formal event. Your jacket isn't appropriate and your name's not on the main guest list," snapped the young coordinator, Ethan Miles, his voice clipped and cold as he blocked the grand front doors of the National Museum of the United States Army in Fort Belvoir, Virginia. The man he dismissed. An old Marine, silent, limping slightly, his gnarled hands trembling as they clutched a faded invitation. It was Veterans Day weekend, for heaven's sake. Inside, the elite clinked champagne glasses and cameras flashed like fireworks. Outside, a true hero stood rejected, his dignity as worn as his jacket. But wait, what unfolded next? It didn't just hush the room, it brought a four-star general to shut the whole glittering affair down in a blaze of protest. Welcome to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness pierce the heart. Let's dive into this moment. Can you feel the weight of it already? Picture this, the morning air was sharper than a bayonet that day, wasn't it? A thin, ghostly mist draped over the museum's parking lot, softening the edges of the world like a memory teetering on the edge of clarity. From the northern sidewalk came the old man, his worn boots leaving faint, damp prints on the concrete. Did you catch that limp, his left side dipping just a bit, a quiet echo of battles long past? His pace was slow, deliberate, as if time itself had taught him patience. Over his shoulders hung an aged brown bomber jacket. Oh, what stories that jacket could tell. Issued decades ago, before most of these gala guests were even a twinkle in their parents' eyes, its cuffs were frayed, the zipper long gone, replaced by a simple loop of thread. In his hand, he gripped a weathered envelope, edges curling, ink looping across it, Mr. Raymond Ellis. Why was he there so early, more than an hour before the doors even opened? Not out of fear of tardiness, no. That's just who he was, early, careful, unhurried, a man forged in the crucible of silence and survival. Raymond Ellis, 76 years old, a former Marine Staff Sergeant, one of the last living souls to endure the brutal Chosin Reservoir campaign in the Korean War. He rarely spoke of it, rarely spoke at all, truth be told. But a handwritten letter from Dr. Malene Porter, the museum's chief curator, had pulled him here. She'd invited him personally to the opening gala for the new Korean War exhibit, a space he'd shaped with artifacts, field sketches, and memories he'd reluctantly shared. No speech required, she'd promised. Just come. He hadn't RSVP'd, ceremonies weren't his thing, but today. Today, he showed up. When he reached the entrance, a stretch of red carpet glowed under soft morning lights. He paused. Can you see him, adjusting the collar of that old jacket? Guests swept past, young men in crisp tailored suits, women dazzling in glittering dresses, their heels clicking like a metronome on the polished stone. Did they even notice him? Not a chance. At the check-in table stood Ethan Miles, slicked back hair gleaming, silver name tag shining, tablet in hand, flashing that practiced smile. Raymond waited patiently until the crowd thinned, then stepped forward. "I'm Raymond Ellis," he said, his voice steady but soft, handing over the envelope. "I received a letter from Dr. Porter." Ethan unfolded it, his nose wrinkling as if the creased paper might smudge his pristine world. He skimmed it, then looked up. "I'm sorry, sir, I don't see your name on the primary guest list. This appears to be a supplementary invite from the curatorial team." Raymond nodded simply. "She asked me to attend." Ethan's gaze slid over him, those scuffed boots, that ancient bomber jacket, the years etched into his face. "Well," he said, voice dropping like he was sharing a secret, "this is a black tie event. Dress code is formal. The invitation doesn't override that." He pointed at the jacket. "That's not formal wear." Raymond stayed silent. "I'm afraid I can't let you in, sir," Ethan pressed on. "We have to maintain a certain standard for our guests." Not cruel words, but oh, so dismissive. A woman nearby whispered to her friend. A man stared too long before turning away. Can you believe it? A hero who'd stared down death, judged by the fabric on his back. Raymond didn't argue, no, not him. He folded the envelope, tucked it into his pocket, and stepped aside. Quietly, he moved to the velvet rope near the exhibit entrance. He didn't push back. He just stood there. Through the glass, he could see it, massive black and white photos, spotlights glowing on display cases, and at the heart of it all, a giant campaign map. He knew that map, drawn in pencil on soggy paper in the dead of winter, 1950. It had saved lives once. Now. Just a prop for chatter. He stood, leaning slightly but steady, a man who'd mastered waiting. Inside, the lobby buzzed with elegance, waiters gliding with champagne, polite laughter rippling, cameras snapping. Did anyone see the man by the rope? Not a soul. They didn't know he'd once pressed his hand to a lieutenant's artery, staving off death in the snow. They didn't know a photo in that exhibit showed 5 young Marines, for who never came home, and that Raymond had carried the 5th from a frozen trench. He didn't shout it out. That wasn't him. But someone saw, thank goodness. Lena Chambers, a museum intern, paused mid-step, brochures in hand near the east wing. She watched him, alone, still, eyes locked on the glass. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice gentle as a breeze, "can I help you? Are you waiting for someone?" Raymond turned, his eyes deep and steady, a well of resilience. "No," he said, "just waiting." She hesitated. "Are you Mr. Ellis?" He blinked. Dr. Porter mentioned someone by that name, she added, a very important contributor to the exhibit. Before he could answer, Ethan swooped in. "Lena," he snapped, "I already told this gentleman he's not admitted tonight." Her cheeks flushed. This is a formal event," Ethan cut in. "We need to keep things professional." To Raymond, he said, "Sir, if you stay here, I'll need to call security." Raymond held his gaze. "I'm not causing trouble. I'm just waiting for Dr. Porter." Ethan's smile was tight. "She's busy with VIPs. I'm sure you understand." Raymond turned back to the glass, silent. Minutes ticked by, 10, 15. More guests arrived, their eyes skimming over him, some curious, some indifferent, most blind. He stood like a forgotten monument, a piece of history too heavy to lift, too real to face. A draft tugged at his thin jacket. Did he mind the cold? Not a bit, he'd known worse. If Dr. Porter didn't come, he'd leave as quietly as he'd arrived. Why did he stay? Because that face in the photo behind the glass, grainy, frozen, wouldn't let him go. Who was that face? Koskasi 23, Casey, a second lieutenant from Omaha, freckles dotting a laugh too loud by half a second. Fresh from West Point, green as new grass, he'd called Raymond Sergeant E. That photo captured them days before the final push at Chosen, 5 Marines in a trench, half smiling, half spent. Raymond crouched low, snow in his collar, eyes shadowed. Casey had written home that night, told his mom the cold wasn't bad, he was learning, his NCO had his back. Raymond read that letter later. Why this photo for the exhibit? There were livelier ones, but maybe this one showed the cost. Then, hiss. Doors swung open behind him. Bootsteps rang out, sharp, steady, military. Raymond didn't turn. He knew that sound, felt it in his marrow. The crowd hushed. The quartet faltered. A voice cut through, "Sergeant Ellis." He turned. There stood General Matthew Conrad, uniform pristine, for stars gleaming, a presence that silenced the room. Raymond blinked. The young lieutenant was gone, replaced by this titan of a man. But those eyes, recognition, relief, reverence. Conrad strode forward, parting the crowd like water. Ethan froze, pale as snow. The general stopped, saluted, crisp, perfect. Raymond returned it, slower but sure. "You came, Conrad said softly. Didn't think you'd be here, Raymond replied. I wasn't sure you would be. A quiet moment stretched between them, decades in a glance. Conrad faced the crowd. This man, he boomed, is why I'm here today. Confusion rippled. You don't know Chosen Reservoir, 30 below, ice marches, no one left behind, even if it meant dying. He turned to Raymond, who looked down. I was 23, green, shot in the hip, bleeding out in the snow. He came back, under fire, 600 yards, shrapnel in his shoulder, dragging 2 others, refusing medevac until we were all safe. He stepped closer. You saved me, Sergeant Ellis, and never took credit. To Ethan, he asked, did you deny him entry? Ethan stammered, the dress code. Conrad cut him off. Enough. We honor history tonight, yet reject a man who is history. Silence fell. If he's not welcome, I'm not either. This gala is over. Gasps echoed. Military guests followed him out. To Raymond, he said, let's see your exhibit. They walked in, side by side, boots thundering respect. Can you imagine a silence so loud it drowns out a room full of chatter? Raymond didn't respond, he didn't have to. Behind his weathered quiet stood a lifetime of truth, raw and unyielding, the kind that doesn't shout but still stops you cold. The general turned to Ethan, who looked like he'd trade his soul to vanish into the polished museum floor. Is it true? Conrad asked, his voice so calm it felt like a storm brewing. That this man was denied entry to this event. Ethan's throat bobbed, his words stumbling out like a confession. General, sir, there was a dress code, and I didn't, he wasn't on the main list, and, the general's hand shot up. Enough. He faced the room, his silver-starred shoulders squared, eyes blazing. We came here tonight to honor history, to celebrate those who served. And yet, can you believe it, we turned away one of the last living souls who is that history. The room froze, a silence so thick you could feel it press against your chest. Nobody twitched. Conrad's voice dropped, softer now, but heavier than a cannonball. I've seen young men freeze to death in foxholes, their breath icing over before their eyes closed. I've watched brothers stagger through open snow, carrying their wounded kin under a rain of mortar fire. And I've seen what happens when this country forgets who paid for its freedom. Oh, how it stings. He locked eyes with Ethan, who shrank under the weight. This man isn't dressed inappropriately. He's clad in history, don't you see it? The scars of sacrifice woven into that jacket. Conrad stepped to Raymond's side, a tower of resolve. If he's not welcome here, then neither am I, mark my words. And then, oh, the moment. He turned to the museum director, the staff, the gaping crowd. This gala, he declared, his voice ringing like a gavel, is over. Gasps erupted, did you hear that, followed by murmurs, then a stillness so absolute it felt like the world held its breath. He wasn't joking, not for a heartbeat. One by one, the military delegation snapped to action, honor guards in crisp whites, commanders with chests full of medals, aides clutching briefcases, pivoting on their heels and marching out. They left behind trays of champagne fizzing into silence, half-spoken toasts dangling in the air, spotlights fading to gray. The general motioned to Raymond, his tone gentler now. Let's go see the exhibit you built, your blood and sweat etched into it. You've earned more than a peek through glass. Raymond paused, then nodded, a flicker of something, pride, relief, in his weathered eyes. As they strode together into the museum's heart, the crowd parted again, not with stiff formality this time, but with a hush, a reverence that felt almost holy. Behind them, the sharp echo of boots on marble rolled like a distant storm. Picture this, Chosen Reservoir, 1950. The snow wasn't just falling, it was slashing sideways. Thick and merciless, it stung like shards of glass against frostbitten skin. The wind screamed across the ridge, a sound so piercing it was like steel grinding on bone. They'd lost radio contact hours ago, for endless hours, cut off in a frozen nowhere. The lieutenant was down, sprawled behind a splintered tree line, blood pooling beneath him. 3 others lay bleeding, their groans swallowed by the gale. Raymond's hands were numb, could he even feel them anymore, his fingers stiff as ice. The wound in his arm throbbed, then faded to nothing, blood crusted over his brow, blurring his sight. But did he quit? No. He crawled, through that hell. He reached the lieutenant first, face white as death, lips tinged blue, a bullet clean through his hip, arterial and gushing. 1 hour, that's all he had unless Raymond got him warm, patched him up. No words, no hesitation, he hoisted him up. The boy's scream pierced the storm, then faded. Raymond pressed on. 2 more waded down the slope, one with a leg shattered like kindling, the other gasping through a punctured lung. He dragged them all, 3 broken souls, one by one to a half-frozen outcrop. And then, what a man, he laid his own body over theirs, a human shield against the wind's icy claws. 6 hours he waited, no fire, no light, just the faint rasp of breath, the sticky warmth of blood, the endless black. Over and over, he rasped, "You stay with me. You stay with me." All 3 lived, can you fathom it? And Raymond? He locked that night away, never breathing a word. Back in the museum, Raymond stood before the chosen display, the room now a ghost town. Guests had slipped away, tongues tied. Staff hovered near the walls, eyes downcast, afraid to meet his gaze. Only the general stayed, a steadfast shadow at his side. Raymond stared at the map, his map, pencil scratches now pristine and framed like a relic. He pointed to a jagged spot near the southern edge. "We came down through here," he said, voice soft but steady as stone. "Should have been a suicide run, how did we make it, but the ice held." The general nodded, hanging on every syllable. Raymond drew a slow breath, his gravelly voice stretching across decades. "I lost 11 men that night. Their names hung unspoken, did he need to say them? The silence carried their weight. The museum lobby doors gaped open, a Virginia evening chill seeping in. But it wasn't the cold that sharpened the air, it was the silence, heavy with what had just unfolded. Word raced through the crowd like a spark on dry grass. The gala, weeks in the planning, every detail polished, shattered in under 3 minutes by one man's voice, a 4-star general, standing with one old Marine. How could it happen so fast? Near the check-in desk, Ethan Miles stood petrified, clutching his tablet like a lifeline he'd forgotten how to throw. That fake smile. Wiped clean. Now his face was pale, eyes wide with the dawning horror of a mistake no rulebook could erase. Across the lobby, Malene Porter burst in, heels clacking on marble as she raced from the exhibit wing. She'd been stuck in press interviews, talking about unsung heroes, no less, but the second she saw the tension, the empty space where the general had stood, her stomach dropped. She grabbed Lena, the intern. "What happened?" she hissed, voice trembling. Lena's eyes were saucers. "He was denied entry, Mr. Ellis, because of his clothes. Ethan said he didn't fit the dress code." Malene's face froze, color draining away. She scanned the room and there they were, Raymond Ellis and General Conrad, side by side near the chosen display. Raymond spoke low, pointing at the exhibit, the general listened, head bowed in quiet awe. Malene didn't wait, she bolted down the hall, past velvet ropes and dim lights. Raymond's fingers grazed the display glass. "I drew that map under a mess tent," he murmured. "No comms, can you imagine, just stars and gut." Conrad nodded. "They built the whole exhibit's path from it. Never thought I'd see it framed up like this." A pause. "I didn't draw it for frames," he added, voice tinged with loss. "I drew it so boys could get home." Then Malene stepped in, her voice soft as a plea. "Mr. Ellis." He looked up. She edged closer, reverent. I'm so sorry, she said, hands wringing. I had no idea, I should have greeted you myself. Raymond gave a faint nod. Didn't come for handshakes. Conrad's eyes flashed. He was told to leave, he said, voice cutting, right in front of everyone. Stood outside the exhibit of his own war while tuxedos sipped wine by his memories. Malene nodded, tears brimming. I know, I heard. Her voice broke. I invited you to show the real cost of war, not numbers, but you, your story. Raymond didn't reply at once. He glanced at the map. Quiet as snowfall, he said. Most stories don't fit in glass. In the lobby, chaos simmered. Richard Quell, the museum director, stormed in, red-faced and panting. He zeroed in on Ethan. What did you do? He snarled, low and lethal. Ethan fumbled. I followed procedure. He wasn't on the list, his clothes. Quell gripped his arm. That's Staff Sergeant Raymond Ellis. His notes prop up our whole chosen exhibit. I didn't know. You didn't ask. Quell spun away, fury checked. Guests whispered, some slipped out. The military delegation was gone, leaving junior officers milling, lost. No one dared touch the music or champagne, not while that moment lingered. Then, like a quiet thunderclap, General Conrad and Raymond re-entered the lobby. They didn't speak, their presence roared enough. Dr. Porter trailed them, solemn. Conrad faced the crowd, then the staff. As of now, he said, steady as steel, every active duty member is out of this event. No more appearances for this gala. Gasps ricocheted. Donations? Returned, he added. The army won't back a place that shuns the people it claims to honor. Quell lunged forward, desperate. General, please, it was a mistake, a miscommunication. Conrad's brow arched. One that saw a jacket, not a man. Silence. He turned to Raymond. Let's go. Outside, a drizzle kissed the ground. As they walked to the lot, people followed, not with cameras, but questions, awe. A young corporal dashed up. Staff Sergeant Ellis, were you really at Chosen? Raymond glanced over. I was. The kid straightened. My granddad was 7th Marines. Never said a word. Raymond nodded. Most of us didn't. The corporal choked out, thank you, sir, and Raymond kept walking. By dawn, it exploded, 4-star general kills army gala over veteran snub. Headlines hit, local, national, vets forums, everywhere. Social media burned, not with hype, but truth, rare, raw truth. Clip spread, Conrad's words, Raymond's stillness, a room hushed as a bomber-jacketed hero got his salute. People stopped scrolling, they felt it. Tears fell, not from sorrow, but sanctity. Inside the museum, heads rolled fast. By noon, Ethan was out, nameplate gone, card dead. The board apologized, loud and public. Dr. Porter, glued to Raymond all morning, pushed to name the chosen exhibit after him. Quell balked, but vets and public outcry forced the board's hand, the Raymond Ellis Room, a living tribute to a man who never chased glory. Raymond? He didn't go home. He spent the day at the VA, fixing a Marine's wheelchair, no spotlight, no fuss. Still in that jacket, that envelope tucked inside, those scuffed boots, the same ones he wore hauling a lieutenant through frozen hell, holding a dying boy whispering for his mom, standing unsaluted, then saluted at last. That night, back in his modest apartment tucked above a hardware store, Raymond sat by the window, gazing out at a parking lot where a street lamp flickered like a heartbeat, on, off, on again. He didn't bother with the news, didn't skim the headlines. Why would he? In his lap rested a letter from General Conrad, the handwriting bold and sure, you didn't just save my life in 1950. You saved something else in that museum, something we'd forgotten we were losing. I can't undo the years, but hear this, your silence has always roared louder than the world's applause." Raymond set it aside. He didn't need the praise, but oh, how it warmed him to know someone had finally said it aloud. Then, can you believe it, for the first time in over 50 years, knocks echoed at Raymond Ellis's door. Not out of duty, but pure, heartfelt respect. It began so small, a letter slipped into his mailbox, no return address, just a child's hand-drawn American flag in crayon on the envelope. Inside, in shaky blue scrawl, "Dear Mr. Ellis, my daddy says you're a hero. Thank you for helping people like him. I love to do." Raymond clutched that note all night long, not like a soldier gripping orders, but like a man holding a treasure he'd never dreamed of finding again, recognition, simple and free of strings. Can you picture the glow in his eyes? The next morning, bang, bang, a knock at 7:14 a.m. Raymond opened the door to a tall, nervous high schooler, a junior ROTC pin glinting on his jacket. "Are you the real Raymond Ellis?" the boy stammered, voice trembling with awe. Raymond gave the tiniest nod, barely a whisper of movement, and the boy's spine shot straight with pride. "My teacher showed us the museum video, we watched it 3 times. Raymond quirked an eyebrow. "You didn't yell," the boy pressed on. "You didn't argue. You just stood there, and the general saluted you. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen." A heartbeat of silence. Raymond didn't reply, he didn't need to. "Come in," he said softly. "Coffee's on." Oh, the power of that quiet welcome. In the weeks that followed, Belvoir Crossing began to shift. Can you feel the change? Veterans who'd hidden from the world for years started stepping out, cautious but brave. A teacher rewrote her history lessons, adding a bold new piece, the men who didn't speak and why that matters. The mayor begged Raymond to be the guest of honor at the Veterans Day parade. Raymond said no, too much fuss, but he agreed to walk at the back, beside a 92-year-old Korean War medic who hadn't worn his service cap in decades. They didn't wave, didn't chat, yet every block they passed hushed, not out of rules, but pure, deep reverence. Can you hear that silence ringing? The National Museum didn't hold back either. No ribbons, no fireworks, just a quiet, powerful rededication. A simple plaque declared, "The Raymond Ellis Room, for the ones who didn't ask to be remembered, but remembered anyway." Beneath it, a bench of repurposed oak, polished by hand, beckoned visitors. A small sign whispered above, "Please sit. Please remember." And they did. School kids with curious eyes, veterans with knowing nods, strangers just passing through, all sat, all pondered why quiet men like Raymond matter so much. Doesn't that tug at your heart? But the biggest surprise? Lena Chambers, the museum intern who tried to speak up at the gala, she never forgot that night. She graduated that spring, and in her final paper, she poured out her soul. "We teach military history through battles and borders, but what about the moments after? No cameras, no trumpets, just a man standing silent outside a museum, in the jacket he wore while carrying a bleeding officer through a frozen mountain pass. He didn't speak, but he showed us what history really is, lives we ignore unless we choose to see." Her professor wept. The board wept. Dr. Porter wept. They framed it by the exhibit, a bronze caption gleaming, "She saw him." Can you feel the weight of her words? Raymond never chased any of it, no books, no cheers, no spotlight for him. He walked to the VA hospital just to chat with orderlies, brought flowers every week to his late wife Helen's grave. Oh, how he loved her still. He fixed a neighbor's leaky sink, rounded up stray grocery carts. No medals adorned his chest, but that jacket. It carried the faint whiff of oil, war, and snow, a silent story of its own. Every so often, a knock, a veteran, a kid, a stranger who'd driven miles to say, "Thank you." Raymond never turned them away. He'd nod, let them in, pour coffee, and listen, no war tales needed. His presence shouted what words couldn't. Almost a year later, on a hushed Sunday evening, General Conrad returned to the museum, no fanfare, just him. He wandered past artifacts and medals, then sat on that oak bench beneath the plaque for 20 long minutes, a folded letter tucked in his jacket. He placed it gently there and turned to leave, but wait. A young family stepped in, mother, father, daughter, and a boy, maybe 9, his eyes wide as moons. "Are you him?" the boy whispered. "The one who saluted the old man?" The general knelt, voice soft as a prayer. "No, I'm the one who finally learned how." "Doesn't that just melt you?" 6 months later, Raymond Ellis slipped away in his sleep, no grand goodbye, no last hurrah. He just didn't wake up. But when word spread, oh, how people came. Not for a show, but to honor a memory. A retired Army nurse flew from Kansas, a former corporal drove from Michigan, even strangers who'd only seen his story online stood outside the small chapel, hands clasped, heads bowed. General Conrad spoke, simple and true. He lived his life the way he fought his war, without asking for glory, without ever abandoning what was right. Then, silence, not custom, but respect as old as time itself. Months later, the museum unveiled one final gift. Near the exit, past rows of etched names, a small wooden case held a treasure, a brown leather bomber jacket, frayed and faded, its zipper mended with humble thread. The plaque read, Staff Sergeant Raymond Ellis, Korea, 1950. He never asked for honor, but his silence demanded it. And that's how he's remembered, not with noise, but with a quiet that shifts a room, not with big moves, but a stillness that lifts others up. He never had to shout. When men like him speak, the mightiest listen. And when they're gone, their silence echoes forever. The story of Raymond Ellis ignites a fire in me, a raw, aching frustration at how we treat our veterans. It's shameful that a man who bled for this country, who carried the weight of war's horrors, could be shunned at an event meant to honor him over something as trivial as a jacket. That's not just disrespect, it's a betrayal. General Conrad's salute was a blazing moment of justice, but it shouldn't take a 4-star wake-up call to remind us of what's right. Society loves to polish history with parades and speeches, yet too often we leave the living heroes, quiet, humble men like Raymond, dusty on the shelf. We must do better. They deserve dignity, not just on ceremonial days, but every day. Their sacrifices built our world, ignoring them tears it down. I'm furious, and inspired, to demand more. In our darkest times, kindness finds a way, often in the quietest corners. Not all heroes crave fame, some just need to know someone's not hungry today. And sometimes, that's enough to change a life. You might forget this tale, but without retelling, history fades into the dark. Subscribe to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories, where justice shines, kindness lingers, and quiet heroism never fades.